Hello everyone, hope you're all having a wonderful day. Keegan from the Poke2 here, and today we're finally going to be going over my Chaos level 50 Graveborn and Stabbomancer build, aka Dark Punch. Now I know Blightcaller is out. I'm sorry this isn't the Blightcaller build. I'm still currently putting stuff together, testing a lot of stuff out. I probably will have a spell shot and maybe a Brr-zerker build really soon. So stay tuned for that. I'm very excited to show you guys those builds. Blightcaller is a very fun class to play around with, but I'm sorry this isn't a Blightcaller build. This is my Graveborn and Stabbomancer because I didn't realize that the DLC was going to drop this weekend. Clearly did not see that one coming at all. So I do apologize, I can't leave any loose ends. I did have a teaser video for this build, so I need to get it out there, so here it is. So let's not muck around, let's jump into the skills. Alrighty, for the skill tree guys, now if you do watch my videos and you did check out the Toxic Brawler video, the Stabbomancer tree is basically exactly the same. So I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. I will leave a link in the description to that video, so you can go check that video out if you do want a more in-depth explanation of the Stabbomancer tree, why we're taking all the skills and everything. But I'll quickly just go over why we are taking everything here that we are taking. I mean, Arsenal is really good because we're just going to get melee, spell, and gun damage increase. Gun damage doesn't matter, we want spell and melee damage because we're using the Stabbomatic. We are maxing out haste. We do need haste because haste is going to go with the selective amnesia and Reaper of Bones. We're going to get massive damage. Movement speed converts into damage dealt with selective amnesia. Now the main things that we are taking, and you do want to take with these builds if you are using Stabbomatic or even just melee, is you want to take potent poisons, exploit their weakness, contagion, shadow step as well. It's a kill skill. Whenever you melee, it will be a guaranteed critical hit, which kind of goes hand in hand with our chemical agent. Whenever we score melee critical hits, we apply random status effects, which goes hand in hand with contagion, exploit their weakness, more status effects that we put on the enemy, the more damage we do. Exploit the weakness did get nerfed / fixed, however way you want to take it. It was stacking with just one element. It doesn't do that anymore. You can't use one element to get crazy exploit the weakness damage bonuses anymore. But you can it still works very well if you are running our chemical agent. It's like nothing has even changed. There is a cap now for exploit the weakness. Apparently there wasn't a cap. It just could just continue giving you bonuses. I don't know the formula. I don't know how that worked, but that's apparently how it was working. You could use one element. You could get crazy exploit the weakness bonuses. It wouldn't have a ceiling. It would keep stacking. So there is a ceiling now, so I'm assuming we can only get the 5 status effects on the target. So we can only get 30% damage increase. It is additive. It's a global multiplier, so exploit the weakness is still very strong if you can get the status effects out. So we're using our chemical agent. And because we're using this, the Stabbomatic scales off melee damage. So yes, it does work with our chemical agent. Now the other points I have put in is just nimble fingers. Whenever we melee damage, our fire rate and spell damage are increased, which again is really good because this does work with the Stabbomatic. Whenever we shoot enemies with the Stabbomatic, we will be proccing nimble fingers, and because we are using the spell blade, spoiler, I bet you didn't see that one coming. Because we are using the spell blade, we do get free spell damage, which is just huge. We do have 3 points in the sneak attack, but this is from the class mod. I will show that off when we get over into the gear. And we do have another 1 point in from the class mod onto Arsenal, but that really doesn't matter. But moving on to the Graveborn tree, guys, I will explain this a little bit more in detail and why we are taking everything, because I used Brr-zerker for my Toxic Brawler, so this is completely different. So we are maxing out Faithful Thralls because we do sort of use companions, guns with wing companions when we are fighting bosses. It just absolutely melts bosses because they have crossbolts on them, which increase melee damage, which works with the Stabbomatic. It's insane. It's literally insane. So we are maxing that out. So we are going to get 9% damage increase per companion. So again, another global multiplier. Fantastic to have. Just putting 2 points into Mortal Vessel. You probably could put 2 points into Essence Drain if you really wanted to. But I just went with Mortal Vessel because I want more dark magic efficiency, and more maximum health is just nice for survivability. Put 2 points into Sanguine Sacrament. Whenever we cast a spell, we will regenerate some of our health. It's just better for survivability. And because we're using Reaper of Bones, we are maxing out Dark Pact, so we can get a 20% increase to dark magic damage. We are using Stain the Soul. We're just getting an extra bonus 10% dark magic damage when we deal spell damage, and we'll be doing spell damage with our Spellblade. We've maxed out Dark Hydra. The only reason we've taken this is so we can get free Faithful Thrall stacks when we are killing enemies, which is just fantastic. Now next we are maxing out Ascension. Ascension is massive for every Graveborn build if you are using spell damage. It's a kill skill. Our maximum health and spell damage are increased for a long duration. We get 10 stacks, so we can have 60% increased health and 60% increased spell damage. Huge. And then the bread and butter of this build is Lord of Edges. Yes, now we do have 1 point in there from the class mod. So originally you would get 25% damage dealt and 20% damage reduction, but because I have a point in there from the class mod, we have 50% damage dealt the lower our health is, and 40% damage reduction the lower our health is. Huge big damage multiplier here. I did forget to mention we are taking Reaper of Bones. Now Reaper of Bones is really strong when you do use Selective Amnesia. I will admit the survivability can be something left to be desired on this build, so I will show you another way that you can set up this build where you won't be using Selective Amnesia. So when you take a hit, you're not going to put a fire status effect on yourself and just burn like a little crisp in the middle of the battlefield. I know that can be super frustrating. The survivability when you do use Selective Amnesia isn't the greatest, but it's a good trade-off because you get an insane amount of damage from it. Moving on to the hero point, guys, we are maxing out Strength. I just put 40 points in Strength, more crit hit damage. And we are maxing out Wisdom as well. We are applying a lot of status effects, so having 60% more status effect damage is massive. You definitely notice that. The rest of my points into Constitution just to give more survivability. Again, we are using Reaper of Bones, or I like using Reaper of Bones because it gives more damage. So having more in the Constitution, you're going to have more health and more shield, so it's just better overall for survivability. Now moving on over to the gear, guys. Now we are obviously running a Stabbomatic. It is the main weapon of this build. This is the last Stabbomatic build I do, I promise. I know this weapon is insanely busted with Spellblade because not only do you get melee scaling bonuses, you also get spell scaling bonuses. Why the Stabbomatic is so strong. But I wanted to see how strong we could make it, and Graveborn with Selective Amnesia, Reaper of Bones. I mean, you see the clips at the start. It is ridiculous how quick you can kill enemies with the Stabbomatic. So I promise this will be the last Stabbomatic build. I just wanted to see if it would work with Graveborn because I know how strong Reaper of Bones and Selective Amnesia combo is. And the enchant we're taking is on action skill start. We're going to increase our spell damage by 40%. That is just going to buff the absolute shiz out of the Spellblade that we're using. Moving on to the next weapon, guys. Now this is the bread and butter for the build when you are bossing, and that is the Glittering Fear Knot. Now it is a gun with wings. Now when you throw out guns with wings, they do shoot the crossbolts out. So you can get that crossbolt effect happening. Now we have the crossbolt effect that the enemy takes 6% increased damage from melee for each crossbolt. Now you throw 3 or 4 of these out, you're going to get that max crossbolt stack, which is 25. So you're essentially going to get 6% times that 25 crossbolts if you can get the max crossbolt stack out on the enemy, that is. So you can get up to 150% extra melee damage, which is why this just nukes bosses. It is just ridiculous. You can use it for mobbing. I suppose you could probably throw it out and just do melee if you wanted to do it that way, and probably switch out the Spellblade with maybe like a Assault and Battery or something. That would probably work, but I do prefer it just with bosses because you get enough time to actually throw the guns with wings out without having any downtime. I am taking a live wire. You don't need it. Sometimes I just get bored and I just don't want to use the Stabbomatic anymore. It's like running around meleeing everything. So I just threw the live wire in there. It's not needed if you do want to do more melee orientated stuff. The live wire is 100% the best weapon to use because you get that chain lightning effect and you can just send all the melee damage to other enemies. Now moving on over to the melee weapon we are using, guys, it is a Spellblade. Spellblade goes really well with the Stabbomatic. What can I say? You can use any other melee weapon with the Stabbomatic and it is just really strong. But the pairing with the Spellblade and the Stabbomatic, because you get that double dipping bonus between melee scaling and spell scaling, is just ridiculously strong. So we are using Spellblade. The element doesn't really matter. I just took a dark magic one here because we're taking dark magic bonuses. The enchant we are running is after getting a melee kill, refresh 1 spell charge. I did not mention this in my toxic brawler build. I completely forgot. But it refreshes 1 spell charge. So if you've only got a 1 spell charge spell, it won't recharge that spell. You need to have 2 or more for this enchant to work. So if you are just running a 1 charge Buffmeister, you probably want maybe some like kind of damage increase to bosses or something like that, or maybe another enchant that increases melee damage. So you can get more damage from this build. This, you can just keep your Buffmeister up all the time, 100% of the time, because you're always doing melee damage, or always getting melee kills, I should say. Now moving on over to the ward, guys, we are taking a bad egg. Yes, I did use a bad egg in my Toxic Brawler build, but it's because the bad egg is just so good for melee builds. Basically, when your shield is depleted, you do 35% bonus dark magic damage as melee damage. We're taking dark magic bonuses, so we actually increase that even more. And this is just a god roll. I had a god roll on my other one as well. This is courtesy of Call a Doctor. You know who you are, brother. Again, it's got 20% melee damage while depleted, so we get 55% bonus melee damage essentially when our shield is depleted. So huge. Moving on over to the class mod, guys, we do have the Selective Amnesia. I did mention this when we were doing the skill tree. The Selective Amnesia is so strong with Reaper of Bone because we're able to apply that fire status effect to ourselves all the time instead of for 3 seconds. So we can get the effect from Selective Amnesia 100% of the time. So any of those movement speed increases that you have through skills, myth rank, Buffmeister, that applies to damage now. So you kind of need a Buffmeister for this build. It just takes it to the next level because you get that 60-80% increase to movement speed, whatever it is. I know this is a very insanely optimized class mod for this build. I've tested out a load of other Selective Amnesia class mods. You just really need the Selective Amnesia class mod. If you can get spell damage or all damage dealt as the passive, major win. If not, I don't think it's going to matter too much. Just the Selective Amnesia class mod is going to give you a massive damage increase, especially if you use a Buffmeister. Now, an alternative class mod that you can use, because I know the Selective Amnesia does not have the best survivability, because you will be putting that fire status effect on yourself even when you're not in Reaper of Bones. Like, you'll just take a hit and it might nearly kill you, and then that fire status effect applies and you will die. It can be super frustrating. I know there's not the best survivability with Selective Amnesia. It is much better for bossing than the Warped Paradigm. Said it right there. I got roasted for saying Paradigm. It's Paradigm. You can use the Warped Paradigm. Yes, again, this is very, very optimized. It does not matter because you will be increasing your melee and ability damage by 30% of your spell damage. So no longer taking fire status effect on yourself, but you'll again get that double dipping effect with the Stabbomancer if you use a spell blade with melee and spell damage. So the difference, there's not that much difference between the Warp Paradigm and the Selective Amnesia. I just prefer Selective Amnesia because it just gives that little bit more of an edge on bosses, and you can nuke them just insanely, just that much quicker sometimes. Moving on over to the spell, I know I use Buffmeister in every single one of my builds. I'm sorry, I'm gonna change that. I will change that soon. But yes, we are taking a Buffmeister in this build. We kind of need to, because like I said, you are going to get that movement speed increase with using a Buffmeister, which will apply to Selective Amnesia, which applies to more damage dealt, which is lovely. That's what we want. But we are also taking Zap and Bonk on this. Again, spell damage increase, melee damage increase. Gonna go with the Stabbomancer, gonna go with the Spell Blade. What more do you want? I do have 2 spell charges on this one, which is gonna go really well with that enchant I have. Like, again, if you don't have multiple spell charge on your Buffmeister, just change that enchant on the Spellblade. For the necklace, of course, we're using a Universal Soldier because we are using the Stabbomancer. So we're always going to be doing melee damage, so as long as you hit your shots, you never have to reload the Stabbomancer, so there's no downtime in your DPS. You never have to reload, you just keep dishing out damage. Fantastic. I am using this Stabbomancer one only because it has the status effect damage increase, which is just huge because we're using a lot of dot. Ideally, you probably want Graveborn power because that's going to boost your dark magic damage through Reaper of Bones. Just this one, the Stabbomancer one, just edges a little bit better because of that status effect damage. But if you could get the status effect damage or maybe some better rolls on a Graveborn one is the way to go because we're utilizing the Graveborn power more than the Stabbomancer power. Unless you are using the Warp Paradigm, I completely forgot to mention is you don't want to use Reaper of Bones anymore because you're not using Selective Amnesia. You'll switch to From the Shadows, so that's the only instance you'd probably want the Stabbomancer power if you're using the Warp Paradigm. But if you are using my setup with Selective Amnesia, you probably want the Graveborn power. Again, I'm just using this because it has a status effect damage. Moving on over to the ring sides, we are just taking spell damage ring. I just have a Primordial one here, just with some nice spell crit, melee crit, shotgun crit hit damage passive. Huge because we're using a Stabbomancer. And I just have another one here, an Ascended one here of 26.3% spell damage, and mainly just because this ring effect is going to increase by 50% when we deal damage to bosses. Massive. And that is basically it for the build video, guys. If this video did help you, please leave a like on the video. I'm sorry it's not Blightcaller. Build videos for Blightcaller coming soon. Stay posted. Again, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support on the channel recently. You guys have been smashing the views, the likes, everything. The support is just so overwhelming. I cannot thank you guys enough. And that is basically it from me, guys. Until next time, stay safe. Peace out.